Hey Kane, how you going?
Morning, Reed. How are you?
Doing pretty well. It's 7:30, 8:30 your time?
7:30 here in the Sunshine Coast in Queensland,
There you go.
in
Yeah, thanks.
Australia.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we're doing this a little bit later today. Normally I do it in the mornings my time, but I know that's like 3 a.m. your time, so tried to find the
It's a
sweet
little, a
spot
little
between
bit different.
ourselves. Exactly, yeah, and it's a good sweet spot between us, some late nighters in Europe and the rest of the group. So thank you for joining today, and I'm looking forward to digging into the some of the reports and everything a little bit and seeing, uh, I think some of the magic that went into making that field parameters report that you built.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to be here, and I've been getting excited about for field parameters. They're very cool, so should be fun.
Well, exactly. And I mean, that was the inspiration, I think, for a lot of the reasons that I wanted to do this. It's like, oh, it's kind of like bookmarks. There's so many different things you can do with this. So I wanted to see what I could foster within the community to come up with some interesting concepts and ideas. But yeah, for those tuning in right now and watching this later, that's kind of the goal for today is between Kane Snyder and then a couple of other second and third place winners, we have a good collection of, I think, unique examples of how to build this. And Kane's the number one thing that kind of sold it was the pseudo random generator, as I think you'll probably call it, but it's something that definitely looks like a randomizer. And acts like one. And like, okay, that's all the other ones just have cool field switches, but like, and some pretty report designs. But this one has the most unique functionality, at least as far as the modeling goes. Like the hat got tipped in your favor specifically for that reason. So
Yeah, well, I always try and find a unique way to use something. That's kind of my approach. But it's always, user centric. So I'm always looking for how can we leverage a new feature to give users a better experience. So that's kind of how I approached this report: was how can I use this to create something unique for users?
yeah,
So yeah,
you want to I'd say let's dive into it. I can flip over to the screen over here. There we are. But yeah, this is the report in question. I'll also drop the link in the chat for people to the actual winning contest page. But yeah, if you want to kind of walk through a little bit of this and kind of describe some of the ideas and inspiration that went into building this, that would be great.
yeah, absolutely. So the idea is, it's an exploratory report. So I wanted a unique way for users to be able to pull out interesting things from a data set. Was the idea. There's lots of things you can use in Power BI, decompositions, trees, and tables, and all sorts of things to kind of let users interactively explore a report. But I thought, how can we leverage field parameters to do it in a different way and an easier way for the layman that might not even know what a slicer is or just looks at a report and thinks, how can I,
Yep.
find something interesting? So I guess the kind of functionality is we just have a classic plus column chart. Here we've got, it tells us what we've got here. We've got an x-axis with customer education. We've got a legend with gender, and then we've got a tooltip with the occupation.
Hmm.
And so we can click this dice button, and this will pseudo randomize the field. So it'll dump in a different set of combination of fields. So it dumps in customer education, occupation, and product brand. Um, on the x-axis, legend and tooltip. So I think there's 120 different combinations that it can dump in, and then within each of those 120 combinations, we can click the rotate button here, and it'll actually rotate the fields around between the x-axis, legend, and tooltip. So you see we've got customer education, occupation, product brand. If I click the rotate, they swap order, and it can rotate through 6 different possible rotations of those three different fields. Then users can also choose a different measure that they want to view. So we've got like number of sales, dollar sales, number of customers. And there's a fourth measure, new customers. And depending on what's in the x-axis, a different measure becomes available here. So if in the x-axis we have a customer field, it'll say new customers. But if in the x-axis we have product field, it'll display a new measure called new distributions, which is just kind of a product-based measure, a measure of how many products were sold. So that's kind of the idea. You've got a couple of other extra slices, so you could refine it further. And that's my kind of idea for the user journey is they kind of click on the dice and find a set of fields here that they like, and then they can rotate them around to try and find some different insights. So splitting the data up in different ways, showing different things on the tooltip or the legend. And then they can explore different metrics by those set of fields that they found that they like.
And that was one thing that I did is, I was just going to say, is that as I went through these too, I specifically made sure not to dive too much into the model, because part of it is I wanted to do a bit of the discovery and, wow moments specifically onto the stream. So like I didn't dig into exactly how you built that, other than I just wanted to see from an end user what the experience was like. And I did appreciate that. We've talked a little bit about exactly how you built this, but I'll be curious to know like how you basically created the rotating currently in play section. So like all those little pieces that kind of dynamically not change the labels as well as the actual data itself. I'm assuming there's some interesting tricks that you incorporated into the model for all of this.
Yeah, look, hopefully it won't be disappointing. But we'll get into it. It's I think so. For me, when I started looking at field parameters, there's not much you can do in DAX with field parameters. You can write some complex kind of code to get a selected value, and you can. There's no way that you can really do a lot in DAX, in my opinion, with field parameters. But where the real power of them, for me, is that you can connect them together. You can do data modeling with them. You can make them filter each other. You can make them filter different things. So that's what I kind of explored with them, is how can you leverage data modeling to do interesting things. So I'll show you the model that we have for this one. So over here is the star scheme, which is very simple: product, customer, sales, and date. And then here's the modeling for the field parameters. So I've got just a better view of that. So basically everything is driven from this field combinations table here. And then there's a couple of bridging tables used to implement a many-to-many relationship to the field parameters, which are these three: the legend, the tooltip, and the x-axis. And then there's a further relationship and sort of kind of a bridging table to drive the different measures that result from the x-axis being filtered. So that's the kind of basic setup. There's one, call it a dimension, if you will, that filters these three different field parameters, and then one of the field parameters then further filters a fourth field parameter called the measures down here. Okay. The real magic is really in the field combinations table, which we'll delve into. These bridges are nothing more than bridging tables used to implement the relationship. So this is where it all happens. So I'll show you what that looks like. Hopefully you can see this.
That should be good.
So yeah, what I wanted to do, how to approach it, was I wanted to create all the unique combinations of the field parameters. So I'm using the sort order. I'll just show you the legend. So I use this the ordinal column, I think they call it when you create a field parameter. I've just renamed it. Using that for the key to kind of join. So that's what's always referenced. And so I wanted to create every possible combination of the sort orders in each field parameter. So the way I approached it, I started with the x-axis order, and then against the distinct x-axis order, which is this column here. I generated all of the legend orders, but put in a condition so that it doesn't equal the x-axis column. So it generates all the possible combinations, against column order 3. It generates every other possible combination except for 3. So you don't get duplicates in the combination. You don't get 3, 3. You get 3 and 2, 3 and 4, 3 and 5, 3 and 6.
Full outer join of
And then
basically all possible
generating,
combinations. Yeah.
just cross join with a condition kind of thing. And then again and then join to that every distinct tooltip order. So every order from the other field parameter that doesn't equal the column order or the legend order. So that gives me basically just a way to get the unique possible combinations of the orders. That gives you the 100. You can see there's 100. Might be able to see there's 120 rows. You have 120 possible combinations. So I needed to add a group column though, because this group column, it concatenates the combination so that we have a way to filter each combination. So I'll show you the code there. And the reason that the concatenate X function is useful here is that it allows me to sort the concatenation by the value. So that means that we don't have 3, 2, 1 and 1, 2, 3. If we look at the first row here, 3, 2, 1 is the same order as 1. It's the same combination as 1, 2, 3, right? So we don't want to have a group that's 1, 2, 3 and a group that's 3, 2, 1. We just want, whenever these three numbers here occur, 3, 2, and 1, we want to label that as a specific group. So if I filter to this first group, 1, 2, 3, you'll see that we have all the combinations of these three numbers.
Okay.
So when I filter, so that's how we can filter in the report to a certain combination of fields. And say filter to the 1, 2, 3 combination of fields, and that's going to return these 6 different possible combinations. So then we have to do the rotation, which is like, how do we then specify which combination we want to we want to use? So there's another column here. So this is the rotation. So it basically ranks the different. Let's step through it. I mean, it has the current row values. And then we put the current row values in a table. And then what we do is we filter the table to be only the values that are in this table. We filter this table for the current row to be values that exist in this table, where all the values from each column exist for the current row. So that's basically doing what I did here by the group, saying, filter it to be all of these, and then rank them. Ascending by the index. It's complicated to explain, but you can see the result. You got a group that's 1, 2, 3, and then you got each one ranked 1 to 6. So this gives us so that I'll show it on a demo page, but this gives us, we can filter to a group, and then we can filter to one of the combinations possible within the group. And then, so the index is the actual just concatenation of the fields that gives us kind of, a unique key for each row that we can use for the ranking. So that's basically how the table's set up, and I'll show you, the end result. We jump to a demo page. So here we have the groups that I created, and here we have the rotations I created. Here is the orders that were present in the table that I showed. So the sort orders for each field parameter that just listed as those cross-joined columns in the table. So you can see when I select group 1, 2, 3, I get 1, 2, or 3 in each of the columns, and then when I click a rotation, it allows me to specify one of those possible combinations of numbers. So then, how do we make it appear random? Is kind of the next part. Um,
I'm curious. Like I can at least see the combination of values. Yeah. Like, and I'm curious how this gets integrated with like I'm assuming a bookmark or something like that.
yeah, so we filter a group and a rotation in this table. Through these bridging tables, it filters
Hmm.
the corresponding sort order in the field parameters. So if we sort 1, 2, 3 here, we get 1, 2, and 3 columns in the field parameters. So then it is a little bit painful the way that the dice button is done. Let me bring up the bookmarks and the selection pane. So there's a hidden slicer here. There's two hidden slicers. It might be a bit small, but there's a rotation slicer and a group slicer. So I'll unhide those so you can see them. Um, they're kind of in the back. I can bring them to the front. Yeah, so you can see here we have a combination hidden slicer and a rotation hidden slicer. And essentially what the bookmarks do is jump through combination values and jump through rotation values. Now, one of the reasons I did it this way, you could have just had, a slicer that, a table that filtered the field parameters into different unique combinations. Like, why have it in groups and rotations? And two reasons. One of the reasons was I wanted users to have that ability to find a set of fields first and then shift them around and see
Okay.
where they look at them in different ways, see them in a tooltip, see them in a legend. But the other thing is it makes it easier in programming some of the bookmarks because I have 120 groups and 6 rotations rather than 6 times 120 possible combinations, if that makes sense. So you'll see here I have 20, there's 120 possible combinations. There's only 20 groups, which makes this a bit easier. So I have 20 bookmarks that are the 20 values on
Each
each
the
of these
combination.
in
Yeah.
this.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, each group is one bookmark, and then I have a bookmark for each rotation.
Hmm. Hmm.
And what I've set it to do, because when you skip through these sequentially, when you skip through the bookmarks sequentially, see it's just going through sequentially here. The fields don't change that much, so it doesn't really feel that random. So what I've made it do is say if I start on bookmark 1 and I click the random button, it'll jump to bookmark 5 and then to bookmark 9 and then to bookmark 13 and then to 17 and then it
Okay.
can start
Okay.
back on 2. And so it jumps through them a bit randomly, not randomly, but it makes some skips so that the fields change more as you're going. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. I programmed, did the hard work programming the bookmarks, and there's quite a few dice buttons that are hidden. There's 20 dice buttons as well, because each time you hit a bookmark, it's going to show a new dice button, which then links to another bookmark, on and on and on. And then once the rotations button's quite simple, it just moves through those rotations sequentially. So the idea is that you wouldn't have persistent filters for users, and so the randomness kind of vibe comes from that you would never really remember where you left off using this report. You could close the report
That's
down,
fair.
open it, and you're going to be on rotation 5 on combination 135.
Hmm.
And then you start clicking again, and you'll end up in some other combination, and it kind of has the appearance of being random while not actually being random.
I
So
like
yeah,
it.
I
I
mean
mean, the
that's
it's like, I mean, as long as the intended effect is achieved, and there is definitely a lot of work to going into this for sure. It's not simple by any means, but I do think it does expand the art of possible of like what you can possibly make if you really, in a way, almost brute force a couple of things and set up those combinations. But even with a complex model and design, like it's still a very simple user experience. Yeah, I mean, it's like for the most part, they just have two buttons to click. Everything else is being handled by the model in the back end, but it's simple. It's a simple experience handled by a complex design. So I think it was implemented pretty elegantly, just considering how much went into figuring out how to do all those possible cuts and combinations between each other.
Yeah, well, I mean that is 100% my approach always. I always harp on about it. To be honest, I think that I see reports that approach things from a back end perspective of doing a great technical solution,
Hmm. Hmm.
or they approach it from how do we explore this data the most? What does the data tell us? Or they approach things from Power BI functionality. How can we leverage Power BI functionality? But my approach is always 100% geared to best user experience possible, and everything else is secondary to that. So I think it probably goes without saying, but users don't see your technical solution. It's great to have an amazing technical solution, but it all is
Yeah.
for nothing unless users can really clearly, easily understand your report and what to do.
Oh, and I completely agree. And there's certain degrees as well, like depending on if you're building something like this for a demo versus actually building it, say for a client or anything else. Like as long as you clearly explain, like, all right, here we have option A, option B. Option B is going to be about 10 times more effort. Is it worth the cost? And like let them basically then
Mm.
decide like which route they want to go. Because there are things like this where for certain scenarios, I'm sure like maybe not this complex functionality, but degrees of this of like rotations and other stuff. It would be a great, honestly, a product feature someday. Is it'd be nice to be able to build out a visual and then click a randomize. I know you can drag and drop the fields and rearrange them yourself, but let's say you
Mm.
already have most visuals are going to have usually three things. Primarily, it's going to be axis, legend, and values. And I still have to get used to calling it X and Y axis now, and not values well anymore because they've renamed it. But it's your calculations, your breakouts, and your primary axis. Basically, the three things. And if there could be a
Mm.
button as you're building those out that could either recommend, like based off of our analysis of your data, we think this visual is recommended, or being able to just kind of rotate through and have it easily shift around the data a bit, so you can kind of just see different cuts of it. It would be nice to see something like this eventually
Yeah,
get built in for exploratory analysis. I think is I would want to call it.
yeah, that's where I see the main use case of things that I've done in this report, things that I could actually see myself using in a solution is
Hmm.
something around exploration. And often you might be looking at, like you said, a set of fields, and you think, well, what's going to be the most useful way to lay these out for the users? Are we going to put this in the legend, or what am I going to put on the axis, the legend, the tooltip? Because whatever you do there splits it up a different way and gives you a different view of it. If you
Yep.
have three fields like we've done, and you go, what goes on the axis, what goes on the tooltip, and what goes on the legend. Whatever you choose there is going to be a different insight and a different result. But at the end goal is probably you need to explore these three fields for that customer. So the rotation thing's kind of cool in that sense, is that you can say, well, I'm going to let the customer explore these three fields, but I'm going to give them the option to look at it in six different ways.
Yep. And I mean, honestly, just thinking through the bookmarking, you could, in theory, on this page, even have a third one where everything is as it is built here, but the you could have a button that just rotates through, let's say, like three or four different visuals as well. Like it basically keeps everything, because like column and bar, they both have an axis and a legend, like shared fields with that. The tree map would have one. I think there's probably at least 7 or 8 visuals that you could do different cuts and shapes of it, keeping the fields the same in the
Yeah.
same wells, but just changing the visuals out. So even this uh, could be dynamically changed around from visualizations if you really wanted like a visual randomizer as well.
Yeah, and like I guess one point that I make is that I've seen some field parameter reports, quite a few that replicate like a pivot table functionality. That's
Hmm.
cool because it's very familiar with users. But for me, I just think about like what is the simplest experience for a user to do something like a pivot table to be able to explore different fields. Like that's kind of the experience you're going for that you can get with field parameters, right? It's pivot table
Yep.
experience in Excel where you can just drag different fields in and view different stuff. And that's what I kind of think is interesting about an approach like this with bookmarks and modeling, is that you can simplify that experience for them rather than having them click in slices or choose from many different options. You can just give them a button. Um, yeah.
And Michael, I had just a comment on bookmarking that I'll let me, or like and as you mentioned, this like all this stuff is in line with the user. Bookmarks are today the one of the most unique user experience creators because it really lets you curate a report. As a developer, they suck. I've also like officially had now Muhammad Ali, who's the current project manager. He's like, yeah, when we first created bookmarks, most of the functionality that people use them for today were never intended to be what bookmarks were for. So yes, they suck for like making all these things, but they weren't built for that. And at least the nice thing, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, is a lot of functionality is in the works, like page navigation. You used to have to make a bookmark for every page, configure it, and then assign it. Now you have a drop-down action for buttons. The next goal that I've heard that he mentioned on that stream is that commonly people use it for visibility toggling, to like pop between different visuals, pop outs, and that. Apparently, there will be a way to directly assign and attach visibility to a button without having to go through the bookmark process. So there's some interface will come out to specifically handle toggling of the visibility state outside of needing bookmarks for that. So I think they are continuously adding new features that people are kind of hacking bookmarks to allow bookmarks to kind of be left back in their original point. They're designed to be macro filters, to apply 5 or 6 filters for like an executive or leadership or something like that, and then all these other nuanced features will get their own separate tool, which will be designed from the ground up, hopefully, to make that experience a lot less painful. Because I love bookmarks. I hate developing and maintaining them. But
I mean, the biggest thing that's missing is that ability to see how you've configured a bookmark. I mean, you can see whether you've selected display or data or whatever, but that when you're maintaining your report, like you would know, you have to be so painstaking in your naming and grouping of bookmarks so that you can kind of remember what you've just to make it clear for yourself, but not being able to see what visuals a bookmark is applying to is so painful. You've got to document it as you go, and it's just such a painful process. But to be honest, configuring these bookmarks wasn't that bad because each one was kind of the same, and it was kind of like robot mode. It just went, bookmark, bookmark, bookmark. It was really quick, actually.
I mean, I guess if you already have your selection and everything configured, you could probably just capture, tweak a couple things, capture, tweak a couple things, capture, and it's just like you said, rinse and repeat once you get the pattern down to create 20 of them.
That's what would be cool with bookmarks, though, isn't it? Yep. Be able to copy paste them and just make a tweak to some set, like see what's underneath of it. Like these are the visuals that have been selected. Just tweak the visuals that are selected or something. Yeah.
If you could just like really, if there was a way to open an edit mode for those and just have like the configuration in there or something, but it's like at the end, like at least it sounds like for some of those features, it's coming. Things like that might be coming in the future. So.
I think there's like a lot of things that you can, obviously there's multiple ways to do things. I mean, often there's, kind of like a complex modeling solution that you can do for certain things. But at the end of the day, like the easiest way often to do complex functionality in a report is bookmarks, right? For the average user, the easiest thing to do is configure a bookmark to do something complex, like change something in a chart, rather than do something in the back end. Your everyday users, bookmarks are pretty easy. So I think Microsoft should put some effort into making them more usable.
And like again, it's not necessarily that they need to make bookmarks better. They just need to make what bookmarks are being hacked to do. They need to make better platforms for those, and I do think that is their vision. So like I'm glad that it's not like we don't need to upgrade bookmarks. They were never designed to do this, but we will give you better tools to do the things you've been wanting to do with them from the start. So it's nice to kind of see that that long design vision that they're going to be doing for this.
I did forget to show one thing on the report, although I'm not sure it's that interesting. But I did mention, when the x-axis changes, it then filters different measures to apply. So the way that works, there's this bridging table called measure filter, and when you look into this measure filter here, so it's basically got the values of the sort order from the x-axis field parameter, and then it's got different measures assigned. So if I show you the x-axis field parameter, you'll see here it has 3 customer fields and 3 product fields. So 1, 2, and 3 are customer, and 4, 5, and 6 are product. So then in the measure filter, you'll see if it's 1, 2, or 3, it's returning 1, 2, 3, and 4. But at 4, 5, and 6, it's returning measures 1, 2, 3, and 5. So that's what gives the result. When I filter, when I filter the x-axis to be one of the customer measures, it filters, say I pick customer measure sort order 1, it then filters 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the measure field parameter, which you'll see 1, 2, 3, and 4, they're not in order, but the 4 is a customer measure and the 5 is the product measure. So the 4 and 5 change. So that's how that works. You'll see if I select, if I click through here, I'll see if I can find, let's see, if I can find, there we go. So you'll see here when I select a particular group and rotation that references a product column, number 4, I end up getting the number 5 measure in it. So then in the report, you can see it's now showing the number 5 measure for product related, and we have product on the x-axis. But if I find a combination with customer, here, so yeah, product on the x-axis. If I rotate customer onto the x-axis, I now get new customers. So that's some of the got some blog posts out there about it. But some of the cool tricks I think you can do with mostly around, letting them filter each other, filtering the measures that return depending on what things are selected in field parameters. You can do all sorts of cool stuff.
And what I want to do is just to give people a chance to see some of the links. I'm going to flip over to my screen. The best part is also having to do mission control while I'm sharing at the same time. But let's see. So okay, perfect. Here's my website. I think everybody can see that. So yeah, like the link that was dropped in earlier into this, and I'll put it in one more time. This will have the page that has the embedded report that Kane was just showing right here, that allows you to actually interact with it and everything from that perspective. Download for each one of them is also available at the bottom, so feel free to dig into this and download those. I think a few people were asking about that, and yours definitely is one of those that I think you could spend a good amount of time going through the 85 links in the chain. But I mean, it's the same reason I've had you on for a lot of your other stuff related to calculation groups and everything, is you find a way to do some black magic stuff with a lot of these, and definitely some interesting and creative solutions. Not always simple solutions, but creative. And you do a good job of, I would say, pushing the art of possible, which is really nice, because you hit the bleeding edge of, like, it's not really practical to do this. I would imagine most of you won't, but here is like the absolute max you can push like this thing using some of this, and then you dial that back 60%. There's a practical implementation you can deploy to a customer or something from there. So I do like that that you go to the edge of some of these things in terms of functionality, where it's appreciated effort, but I think it shows people what's possible with the tools.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy with this solution to get bogged down in that there's all these combinations of numbers that you've got to come up with and stuff. But at the end of the day, the underlying concept's quite simple, is that you can create yourself a kind of dimension, I'm going to call it. It's not really a dimension, but a kind of table that can filter your field parameters in any way that you like. So the creativity is yours. You can create as many field parameters as you want and filter them as you like.
Exactly. And there were a couple of, between all 3 reports too, I only had to make 1 or 2 changes to yours, but the one thing that, for me as a developer, is I'm always very cognizant of pop-ups. It's the things that, today you can't ever see in reading mode, and you had almost all of them gone, but I did a couple of little just items where from the embedded perspective, you just want to make sure that, say, like the button doesn't have a copy visual button or anything like that. So those are usually those little extra apologies. I will say that you probably know how hard it is to test for that, right? Because in desktop, you cannot test visual header configurations. You can't see that until you publish to the service. In their roadmap, with the new like WebView 2.0 completely reconfigured that they're doing for Power BI Desktop, that is eventually coming. So there will be a way to toggle between
Thank
edit and
goodness.
reader mode in Power BI Desktop, so you can just quickly, you know, make
Yeah.
an edit, test it, and then, I mean, quite literally, I mean, I think you can see my mouse. Like when I publish a report to the service, I literally just like a fine tooth comb. I scroll back and forth over my report to see if there's any pop-ups that I don't want, and then I make edits from there. That is
Mm.
currently the really the only way to like test user experience for things that show up into there. But I try to be very careful and kind of like a almost like building a website. I don't want any weird pop-ups or buttons that people don't want to click. But
Be
yeah,
nice to be able to turn off header icons globally, wouldn't it? Can you? I don't think you can. Can you?
you cannot by default. That would be a
Yeah.
wonderful option. Like similar to you can change the default filter interaction. You can choose cross filtering or
Yeah.
regular filtering.
Mm.
I think
Yeah.
similarly there should be two global filters that you should be able to have a setting for. One, I do think for the headers, like I think there should be some button per page where you could say disable all, and then you go turn on what
Mm.
you want. Because more often than not, I'd say I probably have less than half that I actually want kept on. So it's probably a shorter path to the finish line to turn on what I want rather than turn off. Because it's easy to forget to turn off something. I'd say you have to be very conscious about what you're turning on and know exactly what you need for the user when you're flipping the switches back on. And the second one
Mm.
is that the visual level filters in the filters pane, I wish there was a way to go to the page, disable for all visuals, and hide all visual level filters for every visual, because I don't want people to click on the visual and have those to access and then accidentally filter at the wrong level. And it's
Yeah.
literally, you click the visual, you hide everyone, you click the visual, you hide everyone, and it's a painstakingly slow process.
You're speaking my language. I've encountered both of these things in my the projects I'm
Yeah.
currently working on. One, I disabled every visual header in the report, and then it went through accessibility testing, and it was said that we needed all the visual headers back on so that we could use focus mode. So I had to go through and do every single thing again in a
Yeah.
large report, and then the same, the other one, I was working with someone and we needed to apply a slicer to a single chart, and there was a report page with like tons of elements on it, lots of cards and different things. And yeah, it was so apparent you've got to like click a slicer and then go through every single thing in the page and say, don't affect this except for this one chart. It's so painful.
Exactly. But two of those like developer features that fingers crossed someday will come through. But
Yeah.
I do want to spend maybe a few minutes on the other two as well as our wrap up. But Gustav also had a really nice one. And with any of these, there's a lot of things that are kind of a factor in through I would say my review process at least. Like functionality, uh, yours won out on for sure just because of that. Like that was the most unique thing. Clearly, the modeling speaks for itself. Like so much work went into that. Some of these other ones have some unique slices and a lot of interactions with it. They're more straightforward deployment of the field parameters, meaning you pick fields, you pick the measures basically. But there's a lot of the nice design that comes into it. I like dark mode things, and this does have a lot of the dark color, but I would say it's still simplistic. They're not throwing on a background which is an image of a chart, like a picture of like a bunch of those bisecting lines. And like it looks like coding or something where this is simple and clean. And I actually have a video coming out with him in about 3 weeks because he made a really unique matrix table that was basically like a little stacked bar chart with a grand total using conditional formatting that I thought was very clever. So we have a recorded video coming out on that soon. But I like Gustav's
Yeah.
report designs. All the stuff that I've seen him do for Enterprise DNA has been really cool. So this one had some nice implementations, a variety of filters here to be able to actually change at these levels. And I actually did a video basically on this date granularity. This was something that a few years ago a client asked me to build this, and at the time I had to use bookmarks because they had like 6 or 7 visuals, all with the date hierarchy, and they don't want to have to go through every visual. And again, that's kind of a feature that it would be really nice if you could just sync hierarchy levels between visuals. So if 3 different visuals all have the same hierarchy and configured the same way, somehow sync them. So not only do the filters go between them, but the levels navigate. So hopefully that's a feature someday they add. But now field parameters makes this a lot easier to be able to have that one-click axis change between all of these. And then similarly with the, for some reason, I'm trying to figure out why the total year to date's not actually letting me click. So,
Yeah, try. Sure.
oh, here we go.
Yeah,
I
I think
think I
Gusto
think
does
if
some
there's a
great.
yeah, I think if there's a certain granularity that I'm at, these don't
Mm,
come into play. Let's see.
yeah,
So I must have clicked something. Yeah, but we have a full reset, which is another great example of a bookmark here. But we have the granularity and the time perspectives, and then the ability also even to change some of the other fields as well on the legend. So kind of similar to what you had in each of the different sections was changing, but giving the specific control here at the top between any of these to break
yeah.
things down. Yeah, go ahead.
It's a great example again. This report of how you can insert field parameters in all different aspects of the visual. And you can
Mm-hmm.
manipulate legends. You can choose different measures here, I think, and also the axis. So very good. Giving a lot of exploratory power to the user. And I think it's nice that he's kept the design simple. There's a lot of information presented without being overwhelming. He's kept it reasonably pared back, so it's nice.
Well, even like the background image, technically the report ends here, but it has that little sliver where there's that little bit of a design that kind of comes in around the borders. Same thing with up here. So, good uses, I would say, of some of the, there we go, uh, layering objects and other stuff, just to again like make it almost look more like a website. And I think we have multiple pages then here at the top to be able to see the different patterns and everything. So quite a few different things going into it. And I actually really like when you can have a button that gives information as you click. So this even has little data labels that go into there. So from a design perspective, outside of just using the field parameters, it's those little small, like almost Easter egg features that come into it. It's like with an Apple product, like the small design elements where somebody's gone the extra mile, little things like that get sprinkled into there that just show that there was attention given to making the navigation experience for the user very intuitive. I think goes a long way to really like selling a report on being like high quality and polished.
Yeah, I think something else that this is a good example of is, and it's a similar
Mhm.
reason why I got into using calculation groups is that you can present a lot of information in a way that's not cluttered and overwhelming because, field parameters and calculation groups, but we're talking about field parameters, they let you, show what might have taken you 6 charts in one chart, right? You can show so much more information in a small amount of space by letting people change, making the charts more dynamic like this and giving them, that's what I see with this report is there's a lot of space for the chart, which is great. The data's front and center, the chart's front and center. But there's so much exploration you can do. There's so many possibilities that you can find using field parameters. So that's the power of them for me. It's like condensing report pages. And I find that a lot in work I do with customers. They'll come with an existing report and it's
Exactly.
Like everything is spread out and split out and every different possibility is its own chart. You can take like 6 pages and go, well, we'll serve you up the same information, but we'll condense it down into one page using some of the functionality of Power BI like field parameters.
And I think, as you mentioned, like with a lot of this stuff is you can display a lot of information without needing 55 different charts onto a page, or God forbid, like a scroll bar. I will actually say that from a design perspective, and something that had a lot of similar artistic designs to this one. One of the submissions was very well designed, but it had a scroll bar that essentially gave it like 4 to 5 pages worth of visuals all in one thing. So one of the things I even on my PC, I have an i9 10-core processor, 64 gigs of RAM. It took a minute for the full page to load on my computer. And I ran the performance analyzer, and when the number of visuals that load cause a scroll bar to load on the performance analyzer, and I think collectively it was probably like 30 to 40 seconds to load. It was one of those like beautiful design, but from a model and performance perspective, it was taking a hard impact. So that was one of the reasons that it was up there on like a very cleverly built report, but that much visuals being loaded onto a page knocked it down a couple pegs just because it it took insanely long to load. And then when I published it to the service, it was like a 3-minute load for it to render everything
I
because it just
mean,
was bottlenecking.
that's part of design, isn't it? I mean, it comes down to user experience and how you design the user experience. And if you design a report that takes a long time to load, it's impacting the user experience. So good call, I reckon there.
Yeah, 100%. Let's scroll down to and I hoping I'm pronouncing it correctly because we've only had brief chats, but Marjolaine, I think is the how you will say her name, but her report also as well. I liked the clean simplicity of it and the a bit of the minimalistic design with a lot of the attributes and everything else that allow you to select between again the measures and the dimensions, but in just a report that doesn't need to present too much information to allow you to dig into the data as well. So that was one of the reasons I picked this third one. But I know you've dug into both of them. Like, what are some of your thoughts on this one?
Well, again, I think that it's a good example of how field parameters have that kind of exploratory power for users, and this report's similar. But I do think it's a really cool idea with the decomposition tree to be able to kind of switch switch the kind of columns in the decomposition tree, for lack of a better word, because that's kind of the thing with the decomposition tree. And I always go back to like a user that doesn't really know what they're doing is how do you present it to a user? Like if you have it already expanded out like this, maybe they don't really know that they can close down the different sections and start all over again. But if you start with just like the thing that you're analyzing and just the plus icon for them to expand everything out themselves, maybe they don't know how to do that either. But like if you can have it already expanded out and be able to change it on the fly with a slicer, it's kind of an interesting idea, I think, to make it easier for users. Like I haven't seen that approach before, so I think it's quite unique where the decomposition tree's there, you don't need to change it, but your slices around it affect it. And that's probably your slices actually change the fields being used. I think that's an interesting approach.
Well, and the decomposition tree in general, like it's one of my, I'd say it's the most practical AI visual that Microsoft's built. Like
Absolutely.
the what's the other one? It's not Quick Insights. It's the Outliers one that breaks everything. I'm completely spacing on what the name is. Let me double check. Let's see.
There's smart narrative and
it's key influencers.
Q&A.
Key influencers is what I was trying to think. Yeah. The key influencers one, I like the idea of it, but I feel it's almost slightly too complex, especially with some of the math and other stuff that goes into it, because that gets more into actual calculations of finding outliers and everything else. This is just very basic. It's simply here is a total and subtotal. Mm-hmm. So it's like anybody can look at this initially with any of these ones and just simply like, all right, so I start here. Okay. Oh, I can do that. And as soon as you just start breaking it out, you can immediately just see where the data goes to. So very little education outside of maybe how to navigate, understanding that there's also like sometimes you can do a right click. You can change the field. Like the user experience might need a bit of education, but I think from a visual perspective, it's intuitive just to look at and just see how that data slowly funnels down between all of the sections that you're trying to go for.
Yeah, I often find that you're making reports that have like multiple different types of users. There might be, it might not fall in separate reports that you're going to have a CEO looking at and someone from operations, and some different types of reports can get kind of combined. And I think it's it kind of blows people's minds for the analysts that might be working with you on a report saying these are the things we need. When you drop this into a page, they might have only ever seen their data in SQL or Excel, and they're used to manually chopping it up, and then you just go, here, I've made this like analyst page for you, and that you show a decomposition tree with a few different bells and whistles, like a measure that you can select to explore in it, and it blows their mind because they've never been able to step through their data that easily.
Yep. Exactly. I mean, it's anything that can help to walk a journey through your information, especially that like this one has pretty even breakouts, but when you can see those large drops where you go from here to here, mostly 50%, you go to the next level down and 95% of your data is assigned to this category and the rest just like trails off immediately. It helps to show that, where where some diverging paths take a hard left or right versus just a normal distribution. So yeah, anything that allows people to, to do exploration. Because I mean, it's nice to have a report that you can print and hand to someone, but when they can actually interact with it in a fun way, those are the really valuable reports.
I think it suits an analyst, but I think if you put it in a report for a normal business user, it can be a bit of a cop out, because like you're basically saying, you know what, I can't really decide what rather than show you a clear chart that gives you an insight, I can't really decide what columns and measures I want to use, so I'm just going to let you decide. So I think I agree. It's for exploration, and it's so good for analysts. It blows people's minds, but like I still think, sometimes you got to make a call and pick. And go like, this is the chart that you need to see.
Well, it's a both and, right? But at least the nice thing with this one is you can save it with a default breakout. So if there is one that's useful for people to see from the start, you can start there, and then they can come back and figure out exactly what they want to do with the rest of it from the beginning.
Good point.
Yeah. But yeah, I think any other comments on either Gustav or the Marjolaine's report at all?
No, I just think they did a great job, and it was I connected with them both on LinkedIn, and it was great to sort of be part of the competition with them. So well done.
Yeah. Let me go ahead and I'll flip back up here. Yeah, this has been great. Like I said, I'm gonna go poke around some more in yours just to see all the measures and logic that goes into that again. But I expected it to be complex, and you still managed to surprise me on the level of detail that went into that. So that was very well done, for sure. And anybody tuning in, like I said, I encourage you guys to go download any of these reports. They're all available on that link, and play around with it, and hopefully they help expand your tool set and give you a better vision on the limits, the upper limits that can be pushed with the tools that are built into Power BI. Any closing thoughts or anything from you before we wrap up for the day, Kane?
Just definitely play around with modeling and field parameters. Doesn't have to be complex, but you'll find that's where the power is, in my opinion, for finding creative use cases, is experimenting with filtering and modeling. So I'm sure there's way more cooler things that can be done there. So have fun with that.
Yep, no, absolutely. And like, honestly, some of my best epiphanies are the times that I'm given a scenario that I have to put a round peg in a square hole, and I take a break to take a walk or go do something else, and then you all of a sudden get that little light bulb that just clicks off, and like, it's that the path finally connects for you, and you go back to try something, and there's, I don't know, I find a huge satisfaction in you try like 8 different things, and you finally find that one that works, and it works. It's not just like a hacked working, but it actually works like fairly well. Like those are those moments where that's why I still like to develop. Training and teaching is fun, but it something about the kid in me is like, it's building the Lego set in a new way. Like you finally found the pieces that connect, and I really get a lot of value out of doing that for sure.
Absolutely. I think I'm the same, creative problem solving. It's just so satisfying when you get that result for something tricky that someone's asked for, a hard requirement, or you do something in a new way that really works, and you found a unique way to solve something. They're the moments that you cherish, for sure.
100%. Well, again, thank you so much for taking time out of your morning to come onto this. I'm sure at some point in the future there'll be something cool or new with calculation groups or field parameters again, or you'll find something else to do some wizardry with. So I'm
waiting for Microsoft to come out with another cool new feature for me to explore.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like Christmas for us, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. Well, enjoy the rest of your morning. Thanks again.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Reed. Always good coming on. Thanks for having me.
Thanks everyone for joining as well, and I'll see you guys Friday. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. And if you want to help support this channel, take a look at our channel memberships as well. And last but not least, please consider sharing this video on social media to help pass on this awesome content and to help the channel grow. So until next time.